What's up everybody, welcome back to another video of Flutter and Firebase Developer Bootcamp's week 4. So today we will be finally binding the logic with the UI and we'll finally having some fun to see all the code in action that we have written up until now. So without wasting much of our time on introduction, let's get through it because there is a lot of work to do and the video might get a bit longer, so let's get started. Since it's been a while, I did not open this project. So there were some dependency updates, and whenever you open this project by cloning it from my repository, so you will get some error of the decoder callback, something like that. So to overcome this error, what you have to do is to go to the pubspec.yaml file and simply update the cache network image package to the latest version. And with that, this error will be fixed. And next thing we have to do is to run the project. Come here to the main, and whenever you run your project on the emulator, so you will get the result something like this. The application won't run, and when you check the run console, you will get the error something like the unhandled exception, no Firebase app default has been created. It's saying call the Firebase initialize app, and we didn't did that yet. And why we are getting this error is because we had written some dependency injection code and we have injected the Firebase file store and authentication dependencies before the app is started. Here in the main injection container, the Firebase auth instance has been taken and initialized lazily before the application starts. So that's why we are getting an exception, that unhandled exception, that Firebase is not initializing, and we are taking the instance of it and registering them as lazy singletons. So we don't have any Firebase project yet. So for that, we also have to create the Firebase project and connect it with our Flutter application. But we're not going to create a separate application for Android and iOS, but there is one more way to achieve this. So all you have to do is to move to your browser and navigate to the console firebasegoogle.com and click this add project. And here type your project name, for example, WhatsApp clone app, and go for continue. And keep the Google Analytics enabled and go for the continue and select the default account for the Firebase Analytics and create the project. So this will take some while and we'll create our Firebase project, and we will follow the different approach to set up the Firebase with our Flutter application by not creating the separate application in our Firebase project but using the Flutter Fire CLI. So how we can do this with Flutter Fire CLI, you will get to know about this in a while. So it's finishing up and your project is ready. So we will simply go for the continue. And this time we are not going to create the iOS and Android application, but instead we'll go for the Flutter. And here we go. Before you continue, make sure you have Flutter Fire CLI login. So I have to log in to my this account in which I have just created my application, my project of Firebase. So I'm not logging in on that account yet, so I will copy this command and open up the terminal and simply run this command Firebase login. But since I'm already logged in with another account, so first I will, instead of login, I will go for the logout. So first I have to log out from that already logged in account. It will take some while after processing, and it's log out from my previous account. Now I will again type the Firebase login, and this time it will give me a link. Yes, and here it will directly navigate me, or you can also copy this link and paste it in any browser where your account is login, so your Firebase will be logged in with that account. So here we go, it's opening, and when it opens up you will see your account, and simply you have to click it, and after some time you have to allow it, and it will take some while, and Firebase CLI is now successfully logged in with that account where I have created my Firebase project. So it's done. The next task we have to achieve is we must have a Flutter SDK, and yes, we do have one, and then we must have a Flutter project, and we already have one. So we'll go for the next, and this time we have to activate the Flutter Fire CLI. So we have to come in here again and paste that command. So it will take some while resolving dependencies, and will activate the Flutter Fire CLI. It's activated, and then we have to run this command in the directory here. but it won't work here because we must be inside the project where our Flutter project is. So we will go to the Android Studio and open up the terminal and simply do pwd to extract the path of this and come back, cd to this directory, and again we will run this command here. Hit enter and it will now fetching the available Firebase projects. Since we have specified the ID, so it will directly fetch that project, and we are setting up for only Android and iOS. So if you're doing for macOS and web, you can also go for that, but since we're not doing that, so we will keep it like that. Hit enter and it's fetching the register Android Firebase Developer project, the WhatsApp clone, and after this is completed, we'll go for the iOS, and then we are done with this. Now it's registering the iOS on the Firebase project. Okay, let's wait for it for some while. And now it's asking for the files Android build Gradle and the Android app build Gradle, the project level and the app level build Gradle will be updated. Okay, yes, let's go for it. Just complete the setup and we are done. After this has been done, we will get a file generated in here. Here we go. And then we have to move to the project again and go for the next. Now we have to initialize the Firebase this way. Go to the main, and here before the dependency injection, call this. For the Firebase we have to import the Firebase core, and the default options are already generated. Now here we go, we got it in here, and that's it. Continue the console, and now when we restart this tab, we will get the iOS and Android application directly in here without creating them manually one by one and setting up them with Flutter application by setting up the mini-SDK version and all of that stuff. So we get rid of this by doing the setup with Flutter Firebase CLI, and now we are done. And here one more thing we have to check is to widgets Flutter binding dot initialized to make the initialization work before the app starts. This time if we have to start the application again, since it's already running, so it must be navigate to the home page, and yeah, it does. So we are done with the Firebase setup. We have successfully set up the Firebase setup with our Flutter application for Android and iOS. And next thing we have to do is, you might remember we talked about this in the previous videos, in the user presentations pages we just directly put the navigator push everywhere to navigate between these pages of the login. But now we are going to manage the proper stat in the login page, and based on the specific stat we will be navigated across different pages of the login. For example, OTP, login, and this initial profile submission page. So here now we will manage our stat efficiently, since we have implemented the qubit already in here in the credential here. Different stats and will be emitted accordingly when the information was submitted, so that's okay. In the login page we have to do some configuration. First of all, we have to copy the scaffold from here, and we'll create a separate method in here. We will name it body widget, and this is going to return this scaffold, our body widget. And the build method will be a block consumer which give us the listener and the builder, and it will be of type credential qubit, so it will listen to any changes happens in the credential qubit and will build it accordingly in here in the builder property of this block consumer. So the listener will take context and the credential listener stat, and if the credential stat listener was credential success, meaning that if somewhere called the method and the credential success stat was emitted, so what we have to do is to call the login method from the auth qubit to pass the ID to the authenticated stat, so that that user will be considered as login and will be navigated to some home page like that. And if the state was failure, we will simply show a toast something went wrong, and then we'll figure out what's happening in here. And that was just listener stuff, like what will happen when the stats are emitted. But in case of builder, like what will build when the specific stat was emitted. So that builder will be a bit longer, but it's just a condition that are pretty simple. So it's checking the conditions first. Let me close this up. And it's checking the conditions based on the stat and the context it's giving. It's taking the builder, and the credential stat was loading. What we have to do is just simply show the circle progress indicator with the tab color in the center if it was loading. And if the credential builder stat was credential phone auth SMS received, simply we will return the OTP page. And if the credential builder stat was phone auth profile info, so we will return the initial profile submit page and we'll pass the phone number. And what's this phone number? This will be simple string in here, string phone number, and will be empty for now, but we'll take the data from the field where we will be typing our phone number. That's it, and this is going to accept it. So we will go in here, final string phone number, and that's it. And here we go, pass it in the constructor, make it required, and that's it in the login page and the home page. And in the when the credential success stat was emitted, so we will return another block builder that will be of auth qubit and stat. Since we have done the login in here, and what this login is doing is get the current user ID and pass it into the authenticated stat and emit the stat with that UID. So that user will be considered as login. So once the credential success was emitted, so we know that the user is now authenticated, the credential has been success, so we know that there will be the ID. So we got that and pass it to the authenticated stat. And here when the credential success stat was emitted, so based on that now we are building, not listening. So we again call the block builder to build the block auth qubit, and if the stat was authenticated, so it's already authenticated by this method, so we will check if the stat was authenticated, return the home page, otherwise be on the same page. And we're also passing the ID to the home page coming from the stat, authenticated stat, so that we can get the specific current user data in the home page and can spread it across different pages when the user was authenticated. So I will navigate to the home page. It's home page basically, yeah it is. Now I'll go inside, and it was going to take the final string UID, pass it in the constructor, and here we go, it's done. And the login page has an error. No, it's not, but the initial profile submit page has an error, and the error is we are doing the navigator push and remove until. That is because we didn't had any state management solution yet, so that's why we were doing this. So for now we will comment this out from the initial profile submit page and also from the OTP, which is doing the same thing, and there we go, it's done. Now we have managed our stats successfully based on the different stats when emitted. So now we are on the login page, so it means no stat has been emitted and the body widget will be returned. Like when we navigate from agree and continue, so we will come to the login page, so default no stat was emitted and nothing has been listened or built, so the body widget will be returned. And when we create a method, so here we will emit some stat so that it will navigate us to some other page, for example the OTP page. Like here we are passing, we have the field inside here, it's country picker utils, and in the body widget we have a field, we're passing the phone number. So when we enter our phone number, so we must be navigated to some OTP page like that. So after the stat has been emitted, so after we have entered everything, so we will have to emit this stat, and on this OTP page we will emit this stat, and from this page we will emit, let's see, when the profile submit was called we will emit the credential success, and here we go. Then we will decide if the user is authenticated or not. So that's all we are doing in that block consumer stuff. So that's all. Now let's go and create the method in here to emit some stat. The method is going to be like that. First we are checking if the phone number was not empty. Simply you have to do is to pass the country code selected and the phone number from the text to the phone number, so that we can pass it in the other page, so that we can use it also in here to verify the OTP from that specific phone number that we are sending from the login page. Okay, then we will submit verify phone number, and we're passing the phone number inside, so it will emit another stat and will take us to the OTP page. Now we have to call this method in the next button. Here it is. Instead of navigating to the OTP page, we will directly pass the method in here. That's it. And now it's time to go to deal with the OTP page. In the OTP page, there's nothing to do, but we need a method to change the stat and submit the OTP. So this method will also be pretty much simple. First, we are printing it for debugging, and we're checking if the OTP controller text was not empty. So you have to call the method from the credential qubit, submit SMS code, and pass the text from that OTP, so that this method will emit the credential phone auth profile info stat, and we will be navigate to this page. And here now in the OTP, first we have to call this also in the next button. So here we go, we will pass it in here. That's it. Now in the initial profile page, here we have to remove this, and then we are picking the profile from the gallery. So here we need something to store that image media somewhere, so that we can take the URL from here and store it in our database and retrieve it in our application to see its result as an image. So before going for that, let's go to the browser and go to the build and go to the authentication to get started with all the services that we will be using from the Firebase. For example, authentication. So you will get to know about this, why we needed the storage provider. Okay, so we will go for the phone, since we will be using the phone numbers to authenticate our user into the application. So I have to enable this method from the authentication tab, otherwise we won't be able to authenticate our user using the phone number from the Firebase. And also, to not always get the OTP in your device, so we have to add some test methods and the verification code, so we can directly test that, and we'll do our authentication with phone with that dummy number added in here. And you can also check that by providing your own number, and it will send you the OTP like that. So for the testing, we will pass some dummy number in here, for example +92 and 301414141 and 2. That's it. And the code will be from 1 to 6, and I have to add it. That's it. Now it's disabled, it must be enabled, and save it. Now it's now enabled, and we got also the dummy phone number, so we will use it to authenticate our user, so we will not get the OTP every time like that. So we got that, and we have to go to the build method, and now we will also be using the Firestore database to also store the data in here and retrieve it in our application. So we have to create the database, and we have to select our location and go for the next, and test mode enable. It's provisioning the cloud Firestore, and after some time it will be created. And you might already be familiar with this stuff, since we already have done it in the week 2. So that's how our database, Firestore database, is going to look like. We're going to have the collection, documents, and the field inside. You will see it after some time when we authenticate our user using phone auth of the Firebase. So that was also it for the Firestore database, and also the storage to store our images media in here. So we also have to get started in here in the test mode and go for the next, and done. Now it's creating a default bucket for us, so that we will upload our media images in here and store them in here. So this will provide us a URL, and then we will store it in our cloud Firestore database, and from here you will just send a network request to retrieve the image from that URL. So we will be storing our images media in here, so we also have to create our storage bucket in here. So from here we can manually upload file, but we are not going to do that. We will do it from our application by the code. So in the Android Studio, now we have to create one more directory in the lib. That would be storage. Inside that storage, we're going to have a storage provider with that code. Here is a class of storage provider remote data source, which is containing the Firebase storage instance coming from the Firebase storage package, which contains different static methods to upload images, files to the Firebase storage that we just enabled in our Firebase project. So it's using the instance and taking the reference, and in the child it's taking the profile, which means that the profile directory where all the profiles of the users will be stored with unique ID taken from the date time that now, the current time, and milliseconds since epoch means every time it will be different when uploaded. Now it's putting that data and reading it as bytes and setting its content type, image, PNG, and now when it's complete, it's getting the download URL and simply returning that image URL. So when we get that image URL, what we will do is to store it in our cloud file store database, and later if we need to show this in our Flutter application, we will simply make a network request like image.network, simply pass the URL and it will do all the stuff for us. So that's what all these methods are doing. This is for upload profile image, and this is for upload status, and this is for upload multiple statuses. So we will pass a list of files and loop through the files and upload them one by one like that, get all the download URLs and return them as list. So lastly here also for the message, we will also passing type, UID, other user ID, and the for making it unique, just the date time right now since milliseconds epoch. And that's it. So that was the storage provider methods, and now we will be using the upload profile image in our initial profile submit page. So down here we are going to have methods to deal with this. So we got these two methods in place. So why two methods? Let me explain it. First of all, when the submit profile info was called, it will check if the image is picked or not. If it was, simply it will pass it to the upload profile image and will perform all the stuff that I explained, and the onComplete is to determine if the image is uploaded or not. For example, it's just showing the stat of it, like when it's uploading and now it's completed. For example, it's a high order function which becomes true when the function is called, and when the task is completed it becomes false. So it's just giving us the stat like what's going on, it's uploaded or still uploading, like that. So we are setting that stat in the its profile uploading, so that its profile updating, so that we know what is the stat, and based on that we update the UI accordingly. Now once it's uploaded into the Firebase storage, so simply we're calling the profile info and passing that profile image URL that we just received after the image was uploaded into the storage bucket that we just created in some while. And if the image was not selected, simply we'll call the profile info method directly with empty string, and then simply it will check if the username was not equal to null. Simply submit a profile, and with the username, phone number, default status header I'm using WhatsApp clone is online false, and the image URL like that. Simply that data will be also created in the cloud file store database with this method. It's calling the submit profile info. So that is for just checking if the image is picked or not. So that's all what's happening in here. Now we have to copy this and paste it in here to make it work. Now this time if we open this up and how to start our application and try to test these things, we might get some error, because as far as I think we must get an error. And if I agree and continue and we got that, that is because, let's see the error. In the run console, from where it's rising, it's saying could not find the correct provider, the credential qubit above the block consumer. So it means we don't have the qubit in the top widget tree. So did we provide it? Absolutely not. So let's do it. For example, in the login page, we're using the qubit. So it must be in the widget root tree in order to use that. Otherwise you won't be allowed to use it and we will get this error of the dirty stat, like it's not in the scope. So you must have to provide it on top of the widget tree so that we will be allowed to use that widget down in the widget trees. Like we also won't be allowed to call the methods like provider of contacts if it's not provided on top of the widget tree. So we have to go to the main and wrap this material app with the block provider this time. And let's import this and convert this into multi-block provider. And now we have to provide the qubits that are used in our application, that are for now credential qubit, auth, and let's also do it for all the qubits that we have created so that it don't bother us in the future if they're also required. So what we are going to do in here, we have to call the auth qubit like that, and it's going to require all the use cases, and then we have to pass the get current UID use case instance, and then it requires the repository, and then we have to provide the repository implementation, and then the repository implementation required the remote data source, and for the remote data source we have to provide the remote data source implementation. No, that's not what we are going to do, but instead we already registered the dependencies before the app is started, and we have passed the dependencies from outside, if you remember from the previous video. So what we are going to do is to do di, and from the service locator just get the auth qubit from the type, and that's it. We are done with providing the auth qubit, and all the stuff is covered directly in the user injection container in here. So that's the beauty of the dependency injection. And from the auth qubit we're also going to call the app started method, which means that to check if the user is authenticated or not when the app is started. So we're going to deal with this later. Also just understand, like we're calling it to notify the application if the user is authenticated or not. And the next qubit that we're going to provide is the SL, the credential qubit, and as an invocation we have to put the parentheses. Now 2 more qubits of get single user qubit and also the user qubit, it's imported, and also lastly the get device number qubit also. That's all. Now when we have to start the application again, and this time if we move to the agree and continue, we won't get any errors. And now let's type the number that we just added for testing in the Firebase authentication tab and test out all the things, like if the authentication is working or not. So I will do 301414141 3 times and 2, that was the number, and the 92 is already selected for the Pakistan. If you are living in some other countries, absolutely you can select any other and can set the test number of your country code. Now you can go for the next and then type the default OTP in here that we have added. It was from 1 2 3 4 5 and 6, and go for the next. And now we are here. Now what we have to do is to type our name. For example, let's say I name my name and go for the next, and now we are on the home page. It's good, the stats were working correctly from the login page, and now it's time to test also the Firebase project in the Cloud File Store in the authentication tab, if the user is actually authenticated with the data we provided or not. So in the project we have to move to the authentication, and yes, we got the user authenticated with the ID, sign in created, and the provider here. So that's all what we needed. Now from the Firestore database, you must have the user collection and the user data inside, and the user collection and the user ID, and we got all the data in here. And since we did not selected any image, so you can see we got the empty string for the image URL, and you will also see it how we can update it later, but just keep it like that for now. And the storage will be obviously empty because we have not selected any image to provide it. So that's good, it's working now. And one more interesting thing that I want you to see is that if I again want to start the application, I must supposed to be in the home page, but I'll be not. So what's wrong? We have called the app started method in here to tell the application if the user is signed in or not. So it might directly giving us the stat like if the stat is authenticated or not, but we are not deciding from somewhere to navigate the user to any other page if it's signed in or not. So we have to take this decision here on the initial route. So instead of just returning the splash screen, we return the block provider, not the provider but the qubit. And from the auth qubit, we are checking if the stat is authenticated. Simply return the home page, otherwise a splash screen, and a splash will navigate us to the welcome page. That's it. Now if I want to start application again, so I will be in the home page, and here we go. Now I am on the home page. So what this app start method does is simply call the isSign-in use case and check if it's sign in. Simply take the UID, pass it to the authenticated user, and emit that stat with that UID. So the condition was true, the authenticated stat was emitted, and from here I am navigated to the home page, and that's pretty much simple like that. No rocket science in here, it's pretty simple. So that's all for the authentication stuff. Now we have to deal with the thing to update the user profile from in our WhatsApp clone. So to create the profile page in our WhatsApp clone, we are going to need to create the profile page also in the pages. So I already have created the page and implemented the functionality. It's pretty simple functionality. So I'm just gonna paste that page and explain every part of the code to you. So it will save our time also and will make it quick to end this video. So I'm gonna paste that page in the pages. So here we got our edit profile page, and to navigate to this edit profile page, we have to first go to the settings, and then when we click this profile, so we will be navigated to this edit profile page. So I'm gonna explain this edit profile page in a while. First let me implement the navigation functionality to it, for example creating the cons. So we will get through this in a while. So in the app feature, in the settings page, when this size box is clicked of this image, so we will wrap this with a gesture detector here, this size box, not move it down but widget, wrap it with a widget. This would be a gesture detector, and when this is tapped, I don't know why the suggestions are not showing, but anyways, we know what to write. So when this is clicked, we will do navigator.push to the edit profile page, and yet we don't have the edit profile page, so we will go to here, and here we will copy this and paste it in here, edit profile page, and we'll name it the same, edit profile page. And that's it. The error must be gone. Yeah, and it does. Now we need the current user in here in this settings page, so that we can send this current user data also to the edit profile page, so that we can get that data in the fields in there. Also we want to show the username, user bio, and the profile in here. So first of all, I have to wrap this row widget with a block builder, and the builder will be of get single user and then the qubit. There we go. Now let's import this and go for importing the Flutter block. And now we will check the condition. If the stat is get single user loaded, and why I am getting the single user in here, as we have a method of get single user in the get single user qubit, which fetch us data from the cloud file store in the stream. So every time when we go to the edit profile page and update something, and when we come back, so the changes will reflect directly, so we don't have to hard restart or close the application and open it again to see the newly updated changes. So I want the data to be reflected directly in here, so that's why I'm using get single user qubit, and it has a method to get the data in the stream. So when the stat is emitted in there, get single user qubit, and it was loaded, so the changes will be reflected directly in here. So I will copy this and paste it in here. So when the stat was loaded, we have to do final single user equal to stat dot single user coming from the get single user qubit, coming from the get single user loaded stat, and we have to access the image URL from single user dot profile URL, and that's it. Now for the username, we're going to do single user dot username, and we have to remove the constant. And also for this one, single user dot status, and for the rest add the const. Now this thing will be returned when none of the stat was emitted. So if none of the stat was emitted, we can simply show dots in here like the data is loading, something like that. So we don't have to put everything in here. This is basically the place where we usually return the circular progress indicator, but circular progress indicator might not look better in here when we come to the settings page and when the data is loading. So showing the circular progress indicator in here, yes, you can put the shimmer effect in here if you want, but to keep it simple, I just directly return the same row with the data like dots. For example, it's loading like that. So this block builder will not directly be modified. We have to call some method somewhere, so this block is notified and fetch data from the cloud file store database. So here in the qubit, in the init stat, for example, we will call when the settings page is open and is inserted into the widget tree. So we will do block provider dot off, and here we will do get single user qubit, and from that qubit we will call get single user, and it requires the UID, and from where we will get that UID, we have to take it from here, string UID, and this UID will be passed in here widget.uid. So now you might think where that UID will come from. Let me show you from where it will come. So in the route, first of all, let me fix this, and here we have to do if the arguments is string, which means that the string UID will return this and will pass the arguments as the args. Otherwise we will return the error page. And what is this error page? The error page is basically nothing, a stateless widget, and just for debugging purposes that we know we have not passed any arguments and that while navigating to the settings page and it required it, so it will simply return the error page. So we get to know that okay, we have to pass the arguments, so we get back like that and pass the arguments. So it's just for debugging purposes to return something in the else condition to tell us like we have not passed any arguments and we must pass them. Now here is an error, so we have to remove the const in here, and it will be fixed. Now one more thing in here, while navigating to the settings page from the home page, from here we have to pass the arguments in here, and the arguments we already have the UID when we came from login page to the home page, or when this process happens in the main.dart. The stat was authenticated and we got the UID and we pass it to the home page. Now we have the UID of the current user, and we have now to pass it in the push named in the arguments we will do widget.uid, and now when we get that current UID in the settings page, what we have done in here, we simply send the request to the Firebase with that UID to just give us that specific user with that ID. So now we got the user on the current UID, and now here we have the user data and we are accessing its profile URL and also username and status like that. So now when I Ctrl S to hot reload, and something must happen. I got 3 dots and nothing happens. So it means I have to hot restart the application. That is because I added the method to get single user in the stat, and to rebuild the stat completely I have to hot restart the application to reset everything and see the user data in here in the settings page. So it's performing the hot restart, and now it will navigate us to the home page. This time if you go to here, settings, we got the current username and its status, and if there were the user profile, so it must have gotten, but there is no one, so it simply got us the default profile URL, and that's what we wanted. Now when I click this profile icon, so I want to be navigated to the profile page, and after creating the constants, so after creating the page const and the on-generate route navigation, we will go through the profile page and I will explain everything happens in the edit profile page. It's pretty simple page, no rocket science, it's like pretty simple, okay, trust me. So in the const we have to go to the page const, and we have created already this one, okay, that's great. In the settings page, and we have put the edit profile page, okay, I forgot that, I'm sorry. Okay, I have to pass the arguments, and the arguments will be the stat dot, or not the stat, we already got one, the variable single user, and that's it. I must have gotten an error, yes I got, that is because I could not find the generator edit profile, yeah, that's why I got the single user. Now I have to modify the on generate route also, that's why the navigation didn't happen. So it's the same thing like that, so I have to copy the single page, not the single page but the settings page, and do the edit profile page. So when this page const was matched in the on generate route, when the navigation push name was called with that name, so the arguments will this time will be user entity expected arguments, and we'll pass the edit profile page, and the arguments will be like that. It requires the current user, okay, the current user, and the arguments will be the arguments, otherwise the error page for debugging purposes as I said. And now let's hot start the application to reset everything, and then we will get through this. Okay, now we are on the home page. Now let's go again to the settings page, and now when I click this profile, I am navigated in here, and you can see I got this user profile, his name and his number, and I can save it from here. So this is a pretty simple page. Now let's go through its code. So what's basically happening in here? It's accepting the current user and getting the current user data, so we can see it in here. And we have the image again, same as we had in the profile page, and we didn't select one, but now you will see this in action. We're going to update the profile also. It's profile updating, like when the profile is updating, so if you want to show some progress indicator like that, so this boolean variable is just for that purpose, and the username and about is like that, the controllers to get the data from the fields. This is the same image we had in the login page, not in the login page but the initial profile submit page. And when the init stat is called, we are passing the data to the controllers from the current user, so that we get it in here. You can see we got name and the about directly. That is because we have initialized the controller in the init stat data coming from the current user. And this is the dispose method. We are disposing the controllers just for stopping the memory leaks. And in the build method, we have a simple scaffold in here, and the app bar for profile here we have, and the back navigation, that is because we have done the navigator push name, so it just pushed up a page in the stack, and we by default got the back navigation so that we can go back to the settings page. And then we have a simple single child scroll view which is wrapping up a column, and in the center we have a stack. That is because we also want to show this camera icon and with this area, circle area in here. So that's why I put this in stack. So first we have the container of the profile, and then we have a position widget to adjust this circle area right in here from bottom 5 and from right 5. So it's adjusted in here, and this is basically 50 width and 50 height container, and simply having an icon of all camera rounded, and it's calling the select image so that we can upload image for user. Now if I select an image, so this will take me to the gallery. Because of the select image method, I can select this and it got in here. That is because I have passed this image also, and that's it. Now this was our profile. I have selected a profile, and the controller already got the value in the init stat, and that's why we got it in here. It's about controller, it's phone simply. The settings item widget, I just copy it from the settings page and paste it in here. And the profile item is basically nothing, the same item as settings, but just modification with having a field with that icon. So when you navigate to it, before, let's wait for it. Let's see this gesture detector button, which is on tab calling the submit profile info, and we're going to see these methods too. So let's wait for it. And when the is profile updating is true, so we are showing the circular progress indicator, otherwise it's have text in here. So the profile item is taking the title, this title, and the description, which might be the hint text. Yes, it's the hint text. And the icon data, which is the icon, which might be this icon, the profile and the info. And then the on tab, so that is clickable. Let's see if we're using this on tab. No, we're not, so let's keep it like that anyways. And then we have the controller to have the separate controllers for both of the fields. And this is just dynamic method, pretty simple method, a row having some size box of an icon, and this is the expanded field in here with the title above here, and has the suffix icon of edit rounded, and that's it. And the settings item widget is same, I just copied it from the settings page. And lastly we have the submit profile info. So the same thing we were doing in the login page, we're doing it also in here. For example, we're checking if the image was not equal to null, which means that we have picked the image. So we will do upload profile image, passing that image, and this time we're using the is profile info will become equal to on profile update complete, so that we know which is the stat. So if it was true, we will show the circular progress indicator, otherwise we won't. And then if we got the profile image URL, we will simply call the profile info method with the profile URL, so that it's updated in the cloud file store, so that we can fetch it and show it in our application wherever we want. And if we have not selected any image, so we will pass the default URL of the current user, which is like that, like the user did not select any image, so this will be the default image of the user which he has previously selected while creating his profile. And this is a simple method which is calling the update user method, which we have written in the previous videos in the remote source implementation. And the user entity getting the current user UID this time. That is because while updating the user, we need the user UID to update the data. For example, in the remote source implementation, if we Ctrl F and go to the update user method, while updating we need the UID like that, but while creating it we don't need to pass the ID directly, because we are just getting it like that. When the user sign in, it generates the ID, and using that ID we are creating the user. So that's the difference in here. So we got the ID and the other stuff like username, phone number, and the status and the profile URL, and we'll show some toast that profile was updated. So that's it. That was the pretty simple page in here, having some fields and the phone number showing, which is not interactable right now, and a save button. Now let's try to update the username and also the profile. So I have selected the profile and it is getting the field with that color. So to overcome this color in the application and to tell the application to take all the color scheme from a single color, so what you have to do in that case is to go to the main dot and inside the theme we are gonna have a property of color scheme, and we have to set this color scheme from seed, and we'll provide the seed color as a tab color so that it will take all the color scheme from that color and will create the different colors from it for the different widgets in our application, and the brightness in that case will be dark. Now if I Ctrl S to hot reload and everything reflects, if I try again, this time you can see the field bottom border color is like that. This time the color scheme has been changed with that color, so that's why it's not default and we are getting it like that. Let's say I want to update the name to, let's say, ABC in here, and let's close it up. And I want to update the bio from header. I'm using WhatsApp to while true we have to code. That's it. And when I do save, it's uploading and it will take some time just because it's uploading the image in the storage, and it does, and it shows a toast of here in the edit profile page. It shows that toast you have seen profile updated. This time if I go back, sorry, here you can see I got the image in here and the name updated and the status is not updated. This might be because of, let's see the console, if it's saying something, not clearly, a lot of logs in there. So let's check out the remote source implementation of the user to check if we have added the status to be updated or not. Here it is, let's search for it, update user. So we are updating the username profile and is online, but not the user status, so that's why it's not changed. So let's duplicate this and let's pass the status also in here and pass its status, and that's it. Basically what we're doing is saying if the status, while calling the update user method, if from the user entity, if the status was not equal to empty string and was not equal to null, so simply the status will be updated to the status we are passing and will be added to this map. And when the update method was called with the data in here, so this will simply update the data in our Cloud Faster database and that will be updated, and that's it. That's pretty simple. So now we have passed status also in here. Now let's Ctrl S to hot reload to reflect the changes in here. Now let's go back in here and let's try to update the status again to the same that we have done before. Let's see, while true we will do code. That's it. Now save and profile updated. Go back and we got it updated. That's great. Now one last thing that we have to consider is to logging out from the application and the video is completed. So if you are new to this channel and you didn't watch the previous videos of this Flutter and Firebase Developer Bootcamp, so I would recommend to go and check out the complete playlist because we are providing most of the advanced stuff in order to make you an in-demand Flutter developer. So just don't miss out that, and let's continue the video. So in the settings page, when the logout is clicked here, so we need to show a dialog box to confirm from the user, so if he really wants to log out from the application or not. So in the global, in the widgets, we need a dialog box widget. So we got that dialog widget in here, and what it is doing is simply a display alert dialog method. It is taking the build context and a void callback for OK and the confirm title if we want to update it, and the content. It has two variables of type widgets, text buttons, cancel, and the confirm title will be on us to specify, and the alert dialog here in the variable passing the cancel and delete button inside the actions, and the content will be the content that we passed, and the alert dialog box background color is the background color we have in the styles, and in the show dialog we are passing the context and returning the alert, and that's it. And now in the settings page in here, what we are going to do, So we got the display alert dialog in here and pass the context. The on tab is for now empty, and the logout will be the confirmed title, and the content, are you sure you want to log out, and the question mark asking the user if he actually wants to log out or not. So when the on tab is clicked, the logout button is clicked. So what we will do, first we will call from the auth_kubert the logout method, so that what it will do is to call the sign out use case and simply emit the unauthenticated stat, and then we will be navigated to some other page. Here we are doing navigator and push and remove until to replace the current page with the welcome page, and then we will be on the welcome page, and then we have to go from here to the login page and the OTP page and the initial profile page, and that's all. So that was all. Now let's hard restart the application, not hard restart but hard reload to make it work, and the hard reload completes. Let's log this out, and now it's saying, are you sure you want to log out? If I do log out, this will navigate me in here. This time if I hard restart the application, so I must be in the same page, splash screen and the welcome page, and the agree and continue will take me again to the login page. So that was all about this video, and with that our user feature is successfully completed. But if there is something a little remaining, so we will tackle with this later if we got in a point like something that needs to be done and we got it like that, so we will deal with that at that time. But until now it seems to be everything is done. We have done the authentication, and then we have implemented the editing profile, and then we have logout from the application, and everything is working. All the code that we have written up until now is working, and in the next videos we will go for implementing the chat feature. So for now that's it for this video. If you have any question, please let me know in the comment section, or you can DM me on LinkedIn or Instagram personally. So that's it. See you in the next one.